All right, so let's take a look at what you've sent us here. Looks like you're trying to dig into some pretty big ideas, huh? Masculinity, societal roles, relationships, all kind of seen through this red pill lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you specifically mentioned wanting to connect all this back to, like, covert contracts in your own life.
Yeah, you've definitely picked a pretty thought-provoking place to start with these excerpts from Sons of Adam, Rise of the Patriarchs by Conrad Riker.
Yeah, this Riker guy, he seems to be diving right into some controversial stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
masculinity, men's rights, activism, and this thing called the Piper mechanism, which I got to say, that sounds like it could really help explain those hidden dynamics you're asking about.
Absolutely. But before we even get into like all the specifics of the Piper mechanism, I think we need to sort of address the elephant in the room. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions floating around out there about what the red pill actually means.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it definitely gets a bad rap sometimes.
Yeah, right. And Riker really wants to make it clear that, like, at its core, the red pill is all about truth seeking. It's about understanding the often like unspoken rules and power dynamics that shape our society and our relationships.
So it's less about misogyny or whatever. It's
He's-
more
he's-
about like trying to understand the system. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
exactly.
Right.
And that's where the whole idea of covert contracts comes into play. You know, Riker argues that these contracts are basically everywhere. You know, subtly shaping our interactions in ways we often don't even realize.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Let's unpack this whole Piper mechanism thing. It sounds kind of mysterious.
All right, well, think of it like this. You know that saying, you got to pay the piper?
Oh yeah, like there's always a price to pay. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So Roker uses that analogy to basically describe the potential consequences men might face in relationships, even when they think they're the ones in control.
So you're saying that men fall into this trap of thinking they're in charge. Yeah, it's like it's perceived
dominance, meaning they think they're calling the shot.
right. Like they might be the breadwinner, or you know, hold these traditional roles that make them feel like, okay, I'm the one in charge here. But Riker's argument is that you know, women have their own like more subtle ways of influencing things to get the outcomes they want in the relationship.
Oh, so you mean it's like a
Yeah.
hidden power dynamic that guys often don't even see.
Exactly. And to really
Yeah.
illustrate how this Piper mechanism plays out in real life, Riker uses this great anecdote about a guy who ends up booking a vacation that he initially didn't even want to go on.
Wait, how does that happen? Was he like hypnotized or something?
Yeah, not quite.
Yeah.
But his partner was using these these subtle tactics, like striking hints, appealing to his emotions, maybe even a little strategic affection here and there. And bam, all of a sudden he's booking this trip, thinking it was his idea all along.
Wow, that's sneaky.
Right.
But also, I gotta admit, kind of brilliant.
The point is, it's often so subtle that guys don't even realize what's happening. They think they're making these, free and independent choices. But the Piper mechanism suggests otherwise.
Okay, so how exactly does this mechanism work? Is there like a step-by-step process or something?
Yeah, actually, Riker breaks it down into 5 key steps. And it all starts with what we were just talking about, that perceived dominance, the man feels like he's in control because of, traditional gender roles or expectations.
Okay, so that sets the stage. What happens next?
Then come the incentives and disincentives. It's kind of like a reward and punishment system. You know, women might use things like attention, affection, even intimacy as leverage to kind of subtly influence a man's behavior.
So it's like,
Yeah.
they're setting up a system where the man is rewarded for doing what they want.
Yeah, you could say that.
And if he doesn't, what the...
Well,
Yeah.
those rewards might start to disappear.
Right.
Which leads us to the third step, subtle influence. It's not like overt manipulation or anything. It's much more nuanced. And honestly, it's often unconscious on the woman's part as well.
So the guy doesn't even realize he's being played.
Exactly. He feels like he's making these choices all on his own. And that brings us to the fourth step, outcome control. Through this subtle kind of dance of incentives and disincentives, the woman is basically steering the relationship towards the outcomes that she desires.
Wow, okay, so the woman gets what she wants, but what about the man?
Well, that brings us to the final step, unseen cost. A man ends up, paying the piper, meaning he sacrifices his own preferences or his own values without even realizing how much influence has been exerted over him.
And this is all starting to sound very familiar.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about,
Okay.
covert contracts and all that.
Absolutely. And for men who are trying to wrap their heads around these
Yeah.
hidden dynamics in their own relationships, this Piper mechanism can be a real
Right.
eye-opener. It's like a framework for recognizing those subtle patterns of control and maybe even,
Yeah.
renegotiating those unspoken agreements.
So it's not about blaming women or anything or feeling like a victim. It's more about getting awareness and
Taking back some control.
exactly. It's about understanding the game,
Right.
so to speak.
Okay, gotcha. So we've been talking about this Piper mechanism
Yeah.
and how it relates to these covert contracts that are
Mm-hmm.
kind of operating under the surface in relationship. But I'm curious. Does Riker give us any clues about why this is happening? Like, why do these dynamics even exist in the first place?
That's a great question, and this is where Riker's argument gets even more interesting. He starts to look at evolutionary biology to try and explain, the differences between men and women and how those differences might have shaped the roles we see today. So he's going all the way back to caveman days.
Well, yeah, you could say that. He argues that if you look back at hunter-gatherer societies, men were typically the ones out there hunting and protecting.
Makes sense.
Right. You needed those qualities to survive back then.
Strength, aggression, leadership.
Exactly. And Riker's point is that those traits are deeply ingrained in men's biology. They've shaped the roles men have traditionally held in society. The provider, protector, the leader.
The obvious things have changed a lot since then.
Of course. And that's where Riker makes this pretty controversial claim. He suggests that the decline of these traditional masculine roles could actually be having negative consequences for society as a whole.
Whoa. Okay, so he's saying we need those roles
Yeah.
to have a healthy society.
Well, in a sense, yeah, he points to the absence of strong father figures as a particularly concerning example.
Interesting.
He believes that boys especially, they need those role models to grow into well-adjusted men.
Okay, so that kind of brings us to another big idea from the book, what Riker calls the war on fatherhood.
Right.
What's that all about?
Well, he argues that fathers are being systematically marginalized in a lot of different areas of life. Family courts, the media, you name it.
And this really connects back to what you were saying earlier about wanting to understand how societal structures have shifted over time.
Oh, for sure. Riker suggests that, feminist and Marxist ideologies
Yeah.
have contributed to this so-called war on fatherhood, leaving a lot of men feeling like their role as fathers is under attack, like their authority is being undermined.
And how does that
Yeah.
how does that make guys feel?
Well, Riker argues it can lead to a pretty deep sense of alienation and confusion.
Yeah.
Men are left wondering, where do I fit in? What's my value? What's my purpose?
It's like they're being told
Yeah.
you're not needed anymore.
Exactly. And that can be a really tough message to process, especially for guys who are already trying to figure out their place in the world.
Riker also talks about this concept of double bind that men face. What exactly are those?
Oh, that's a really fascinating idea. Basically, a double bind is a situation where, men are facing these conflicting demands, conflicting expectations, and no matter what they do, they end up getting criticized or penalized.
Can you give me a real world example?
Sure. One that Riker uses is the expectation that men should be both strong provider and emotionally vulnerable.
That's tough.
Right. If a man focuses on being a provider, he might be accused of being emotionally distant or insensitive. If he focuses on being emotionally open, then suddenly he's seen as weak or incapable of being a provider.
It's a no-win situation.
Exactly. And Riker argues that these double binds are like a form of covert contract.
Yeah.
Men unknowingly agree to these impossible standards, and then they end up feeling trapped and inadequate, no matter what they do.
So how does this all connect back to the red pill and these societal shifts we've been talking about?
Well, Riker believes these double binds are a symptom of a much bigger cultural shift, what he calls the feminization of society.
Okay, let's break that down a little. What does he mean by feminizations?
He's arguing that society has increasingly adopted feminine ideals and values, often at the expense of masculine ones. And this has led to a kind of a shift in the power dynamic, where men are often seen as the problem and women are seen as the solution.
So he's saying that traditional masculine traits are being devalued.
Yeah, basically. And he argues that this has led to a whole bunch of problems. The decline of fatherhood, the rise of male mental health issues, and just this general sense of confusion and disillusionment among men.
And that really resonates with what you were saying earlier about feeling lost or uncertain about your place in the world.
Absolutely. Riker's argument is that these big societal shifts have created an environment where it's tough for men to find their footing. They feel pressure to conform to these, these new expectations that are often contradictory, and it leaves a lot of them feeling lost and frustrated.
What's the What's the way out? Does Riker offer any solutions to all
Yeah,
this?
he does. And this is where things get really empowering, especially for guys who are,
Yeah.
actively trying to understand and maybe even renegotiate those covert contracts in their own lives. But I think we should save that conversation for the next part of Deep Dive.
Consider me hooked. Okay, so we talked about a lot. Covert contracts, the Piper mechanism, this whole war on fatherhood thing. It's a lot to take in. Sure. But before we wrap up here, I'm really curious to know what Riker thinks guys should do about all of this. You mentioned he offers some solutions.
Yeah, he does. And this is where I think his work becomes really empowering, especially for men who are actively trying to, understand and maybe even renegotiate these covert contracts that we've been talking about. Riker's message is basically reclaim your masculinity.
Okay, but what does that even look like? I mean, we've been talking about how traditional masculinity is being challenged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, and that's exactly Riker's point. He's not saying we need to go back to some outdated, rigid model of manhood. He's calling for men to redefine masculinity on their own terms in a way that's both authentic and effective in today's world.
So how do you even do that?
Well, Riker suggests a kind of a multi-pronged approach, and one key part of it is embracing those core masculine traits we talked about earlier: strength, courage, leadership, but expressing them in a way that's
Healthy.
balanced.
So it's not about being like aggressive or domineering.
No, not at all. It's about channeling those qualities into positive action, being a protector, a provider, a leader in your family, your community.
Okay, so what are some of the strategies he talks about?
Well, he also really emphasizes the importance of building strong male communities, finding other men who share your values and support your journey. He also talks about advocating for policies that protect men's rights, especially in areas like family law, divorce.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's about
not just complaining.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really relevant to now. You know your situation. Riker suggests that understanding and renegotiating those covert contracts in your own life is a crucial part of reclaiming your masculinity.
So how do you actually renegotiate these contracts?
Well, it starts with awareness, and you've already taken that first step. By recognizing that these contracts exist and that they might be influencing your relationships, now it's about digging a little deeper, asking yourself, what are my needs? What are my desires? What are my non-negotiables?
It's about figuring out what you want, not just what you think you should want.
Right. And once you have a clear understanding of your own values, you can start to identify those contracts that are...
they're no longer serving.
Maybe you're always the one giving more in the relationship, or you're always sacrificing your own happiness to please your partner.
Those are classic signs
Yeah.
that you might be operating under a covert contract that needs to be renegotiated.
And how do you actually go about doing that?
Well, but it's ultimately about communication and setting boundaries. It might involve having some, difficult conversations, expressing your needs more assertively, or even walking away from relationships that are just not healthy or fulfilling anymore.
So it's about taking ownership.
Exactly. And Riker makes it clear that renegotiating these contracts isn't about control or manipulation. It's about creating relationships that are based on
mutual respect,
honesty,
reciprocity.
It's about knowing your worth and demanding to be treated accordingly.
Absolutely. And remember, this is a journey. It takes time and effort to unravel those deep-seated patterns and create lasting change.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. It's given me a lot to think about, not just in terms of my own relationships, but also in terms of understanding these bigger societal shifts that we've been talking about.
That's glad to hear that. And if you're ready to really dive deep into Riker's work and explore his proposed solutions in more detail, I highly recommend checking out the full book.
Where can people find it?
Sons of Adam, Rise of the Patriarchs is available on Amazon Kindle. And
Google Play Books.
Well, there you have it, folks. Some serious food for thought. Remember, knowledge is power. And understanding these dynamics is the first step towards creating more fulfilling, equitable relationship. Keep questioning, keep exploring. And good luck on your journey.